Good morning, welcome all. We will have home chanting by Narad for 10 minutes and then we will go to class talk.
When we sing the Om, it is not we who are singing. It is the Divine Presence who is singing through this collective body. And when he sings, we have to forget the ego. We have to forget the mind, the body. Even the physical body has to give itself up to the music. These are things that Mother has shared with us. She has told us that Om is the voice of the Lord, and even the image of Om is the handwriting of the Lord. So when we come to the Om choirs, and today there will be 3 of them, there will be one at 10:30 in Mother's flower garden, followed by the talk with those who are interested in the significances of flowers. And then tonight, as last week on Mother's birthday, we will have home choir here. Last week there were 100 people, weeks before even more, so depending on how many come tonight, we may be in the Sangam Hall or maybe the Square Hall. So now we are very, very few today. Less than 20 people, I think. And I would like us to stand together in the center because we have to connect with the psychic being or the soul of every person. And in this very small home choir. And feel the oneness, the love of the Divine Mother, the presence of Sri Aurobindo and Mother. So we are only given 10 or 15 minutes today, and we'll begin. We have to forget the ego and only be a collective instrument to receive this new music that has the power of transformation, transfiguration, go throughout the world to those who are open to receive it. came to me that the bringing down of the new music would not be individual but collective, and the only sound would be Om. I had asked Mother about the organ because the old organ she had was available. Mother wrote better only with the voices, because she told us that the human voice is the highest of all musical sounds in the universe. So in this next poem, we open and we offer ourselves to this new transformative music. Someone can give me a tone. During our own choirs, I always tell everyone that you have many, many notes in your body. Allow the divine to play on all those notes. Allow him to move your voice, high, low, wherever he wishes. So our last tone. A note.
Thank you. Thanks, Raji, for conducting home choir. At least for 4 days we have this week. And thanks for all coming here. Now I invite Lopamudra.
Just before we start, can I just ask you, what are the flowers do you recommend one keeps on the table when you're doing work, which gives you energies? Or anything, all of the work.
Of course, aspiration is so important.
Right.
Surrender, aspiration.
Devotion.
Tulsi.
Okay. So it's a combination of both. Thank you.
Lopamudra, our speaker today is an alumnus of Shayarpura Ashram, Pondicherry. She lived in the US. Currently also she is in the ashram, teaching in the school. We are so gratitude. Welcome you to live with us today. Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. A very special day today, the 55th birth anniversary of our Earth. So, I'll speak about human unity, but I would like it to be a co-creative process. So, I'll ask you some questions and you answer them, and then we take it forward. Okay. So, and this venue is beautiful. It's round. So there is no speaker versus audience. We are all together in this. And perhaps you have the greater claim to Human Unity Project than I, because I live in the ashram community. I've grown up in the ashram community, and that community came so many years before the audible community, and there was a need for this. And why was there a need? So that's the story we'll explore. And we'll use a text that is the foundational text for this dream. The dream of the mother and the dream of the divine. Okay, so we'll start with a short visualization. We close our eyes and imagine just a banyan tree. And it didn't have 25 children like it has right now, just a single banyan tree and this barren red land by the ocean. There's absolutely nothing but red hills and red soil, clay that grows very little food, not even shrubs. And around this place, a long time back, it was a green place. It was a forest. And all the rishis are sitting around the tree and they are chanting something from the Rig Veda. And this is what they are chanting. So all the rishis and their students have an aspiration to walk together, to speak together. Let our minds learn together, as the gods have always worshipped knowledge together. Samgachatvam, sampadatvam, sambho manasi janatam, deva bhagam yatha purve sanjanana upasate. May our resolves be one, may our hearts feel alike. May our thinking be one, and thus may all of our lives be woven together happily and through union. Samani va ahuti, samana hridayani va, samana vastu vo manu, yatha va susahasati. So this prayer is a prayer and an aspiration for union. And if it had started so many thousand years back around this tree, and then symbolically as the trees disappeared and it became a barren land, India as a culture, as a people, as a spiritual heritage also became barren. For so many hundreds of years, India became barren, because of which we were conquered, and not just conquered politically. The land was conquered, but spiritually also we were conquered. Our education system was conquered. So what happened to all those rishis? And the chants that they gave us in those wonderful books of wisdom called the Vedas, and later on in the Upanishads and the Puranas. So all that beautiful culture had become barren soil. So there was a time to revive it. And dreamers, of course, came much before. There were a lot of dreamers who were thinking of fertilizing the barrenness. And it's not just India that went through this phase of barrenness, it was the whole world. And there was this occult battle that we know, the World Wars were occult battles. And it was this fight against bringing back the goodness that's there. And all these energies together conspired to bring about something, a project like Auroville. So we'll just look a little bit at what happened to human civilization and how we came to this point in 1968, 28th February, 55 years back. So there was this period of colonization and a lot of movement that is misnomered as enlightenment. It was a very deep pursuit of just the materialistic living, the scientific worldview, everything that was divorced from the soul, the psychic being. So all the cultures that worship the soul primarily were set in the background. And those that worship matter, the body, the mind, the rational mind came to the foreground. And that was a very big barrenness for the soul. So for many years, hundreds of years, this sort of worldview took the forefront in human civilization. And then what happens is we always have dreamers, and the dreamers dreamt of places, or little pockets of places they called utopias. And utopias, interestingly, topia means a region, like topography, region, and EU, you know the prefix EU for euphemism, eudaimonia. So these words mean U means good. So good region is utopia. So then they dreamt of this thing called utopia, and to simplify the spelling, they made it utopia, just a U, not EU. And what happens with that change of vibration of the word? Can you guess what U means? Instead of EU, which is like Su, in Sanskrit we say Su, or good land, utopia, U is no land. So it became really a land of the imagination. It's not really a land that exists. So is it really a utopia that is part of an imagination that shouldn't really exist? It's part of the thought world, but not in the real world. So it became part of the thought world, and you can see how the word itself suggested that I don't exist. No utopias exist. But here's a quote from a thinker and a writer. He was in the 1900s, he passed away in 1900. So this is Oscar Wilde, very well-known author, a dreamer. So he writes, a map of the world that does not include utopia is not worth even glancing at. For it leaves out the one country at which humanity is always landing. So we've always had this aspiration, and you give us a map without a utopia, thinking it to be a no land, a utopia instead of EU. It's not worth looking at, because this is not where we want to go. And we can't live without that aspiration to go forward. So there were people who created utopias. Shambhala is a utopia of the Buddhist worldview. El Dorado is a utopia of the Spanish worldview. Similarly, there are different utopias you've heard of. But historically, what happened to utopias is they became dystopias. So there was this Aldous Huxley who wanted to write a story of utopia. He called it the Brave New World. He started off with such a great aspiration, and he didn't know how to end it because the world around him was crumbling. This was the time of the world wars. Colonization, world wars, there's a lot of destruction and cruelty. So his utopia, if you have read The Brave New World, becomes a dystopia. And it ends with that one human who's still alive, the one human that still has a soul, has to kill himself because the world is without a soul. And people don't even feel that they have no soul. So they have become so distant from their soul that they don't even remember that they had a soul. So that was during the Second or First World War. 50 years later, there's another author, this is Laurie Lois. She writes another book, another story on utopia, and it's called The Giver. So she is going the similar way as Aldous Huxley. She's talking about a world that has become so mechanistic that people don't remember what music is. It has become so, there's no aesthetics in this. Children are born with numbers, they don't even have names. And they're all born in a laboratory, they're raised the ideal way, of course the ideal is not ideal. And one of these children is still connected with his soul. So he is chosen to be the receiver of memories. So of all the people in the society, they choose one man who will be the receiver, one man or woman who will be the receiver of memory so that he can carry forward the memory of what we used to be as humans. And he sees the wars, he sees the goodness and the badness in humanity, and he's crushed by what we have become, the mechanical human being. And he realizes that he has to escape from this dystopia. So it's coming close, it's sort of parallel to the Brave New World, it's just 60 years later. And what does the author do? Does she give him a redemption? Like, has she seen something more than what Aldous Huxley has seen? In other words, has human civilization gotten over that hump of hopelessness? And she doesn't. So he escapes from this world that she has created, this very mechanistic world where people don't remember anything. They're just doing things, day-to-day things, and they've become almost like machines and robots. And he escapes out of it. He's almost dying in the process, but he manages to go into this, what is called the savage place, which is what humanity is right now. The wilderness, the savage place, and he's saved. His soul is saved. So, this was written in 1993, The Giver, by Laurie Lois, and Aldous Huxley was a long time back, and The Brave New World is 1932. 93 and 32, so roughly 60 years. We've gone through a huge change in worldview. So, what really happened? How did this change happen? So in 1917, there's this Bolshevik revolution in Russia, and there's a lot of hope that it's going to bring back equality of people. That equality that ancient small societies had thought of will return in a large scale. The whole country will be equal. People will be, those three wonderful ideas that were thrown out of the French Revolution: equality, liberty, and fraternity. So they are working on equality, and it's a very beautiful principle. But what happens to it? So there's a lot of disillusionment after the whole project of equality becomes a project of the dictatorship of a few and the crushing of the many. So it is equal but equally bad. Everyone is in an equally bad situation and just a few in a good situation. So that hope was crushed. And then there were people like Kafka, who wrote his novels, existential novels of the trial, the castle, where people are going through, they don't even know their crime, but they're being punished for it. And those who are punishing it are following the book. They also don't know why they're punishing this man. So there's a sense of guilt and shame created by systems outside human control. But this is what people have submitted to. And the individual is completely dehumanized in the process. And Kafka's was 1925, of course, between the wars. It was a very dull, dark period. Then George Orwell also, just before the Second World War, actually at the end of Second World War, he got published. 1984 and Animal Farm. They were extremely dark novels. Completely dystopic, but so realistic in those days, kind of world leaders we had. So from that complete darkness and 1944, 45. How did this idea of Auroville come about? So through the darkness, there was not darkness everywhere, of course. There were some dreamers who never gave up. And one of the dreamers was Sri Aurobindo. And he started his life as an agnostic because he didn't know any better. And we know the whole civilization, whole of humanity was going through a period of not knowing, loss of knowledge. So he was also part of that, but when he came to India, he picked up these Vedas, like the first invocation sloka we did. He picked them up and he found that there's such a lot of life in them. Why are they trapped? Let me just unloose, like open the doors and let this life play around. So his life started off as a big mission to free India. And when he went to jail, his mission changed. He said, I'm not here to just free one nation, I'm here to free all of humanity. Because all of humanity is actually in a prison. So he comes to Pondicherry. And people say that why did he come to Pondicherry? It's because circumstantial, happenstance. Because Pondicherry was a French colony and the rest of India was British. And Sri Aurobindo was escaping from the British because they were going to put him in jail again after his release. So he came to Pondicherry. And because he came to Pondicherry, the ashram happened to be in Pondicherry. But if you really have a historical sense and you really go backwards in time, it's almost like Pondicherry wasn't a British territory because Sri Aurobindo had to come here. Okay, it happens to be a French territory. And why did Sri Aurobindo have to come here? Because the rishis were meditating under the banyan tree. A long time back, there was an ashram here, and they were meditating under the banyan tree. And this soil is sacred. This whole place of Pondicherry or this land is sacred, and the sacredness had to be brought back. It had to manifest again. So that's why he came to Pondicherry, and he wrote his ideals of human unity. His social and political thoughts, they came out in the magazine called Arya. So every month he used to write this very thick magazine, almost single-handedly, and he published all his books chapter by chapter in this magazine called Arya. And one of these books that he published in this serialized fashion was called The Ideal of Human Unity. Okay, so here he's raising very important questions, and he's also looking way into the future. So in 1914 to 1920, that was the period when he's writing this book, and he's already looking ahead in time because he has this historical sense. He knows where humanity is going. So what do you think? Is human unity something that was really reaching ahead of time? Is it even something that nature wants? Because if you don't follow the time spirit, then it will not work out. Because that occult energy is very powerful. One or two humans can dream, but then dreamers will come and go, and nature's project will remain. So is this something that was supposed to come in the evolution of societies, or is it something that he was forcing? What's your sense of it?
Actually, all creation started to the Big Bang. I mean, this was all. Everything has been totally a distortion right from the beginning of that. Where nothing is really, anything is really calm. It's all friction, and so any dreamer coming out of that has to have someone to follow, and hence there's got to be discord, and then there's harmony. If there's no discord, there cannot be harmony. You have to have a flip side to everything. So possibly that's how it probably grows. With the discord, you have someone coming out with the ideal, and then the building up of that. That's like a life forces coming together and working together.
Right, yeah. That's true, that dreamers will always go against this God and they will always dream, no matter what. But here was this dream even supported by evidence from nature. And if you look at history, how we started with small villages and city-states, and we became nation-states, and then nation aggregates. And a lot of it is because we were forced by some conqueror, like let's say Napoleon comes up, one country, he wants to conquer the rest of Europe. So the rest of Europe who've been fighting with each other have to band together to stand up to one conqueror. Similarly, during the German invasion of Europe, all the other allies, they became the allies and they stood against. So we were forced into union, not willingly perhaps, and as soon as the need went off, again there was disunity. But it's one of those things that everyone has observed, those who have been thinking about the philosophy of history, is that nature is tending towards unity, tending towards greater and greater aggregates. And at some point, the concept of nationhood has been questioned. And people are asking, why not international citizens of the world? Why do we have restrictions of borders, visas, taxes, different rules for different people? We finally human, we have similar sentiments. Why are we so different politically? So those concepts are also breaking down. So right now we are in a situation where we are really questioning citizenship, nationality. And there's also that voice that wants to hold on to these energies, and they're becoming ultra-national, fundamentalist national, very us versus them. So there are these forces playing out, but definitely there is this force of unity. So nature is tending towards unity, and this is Shobhita says from his vision and from his reading of the past and his witness stand, that unity is going to happen whether you want it or not. So it has happened in the past through war. If you are resisting unity, it will happen again through war. But if you are not resisting unity and if you are going to help in the process, then it will happen in a very harmonious way. And we have it in our control to do that. So the ideal of human unity, the book is all about how to help nature in this process of bringing about unity. It's a very beautiful book, and he's delving into history and a lot of things. So I read some passages from it, and it will be from the concluding chapters. So he's gone through the whole thesis of why we need human unity and why it is definitely a possibility. And in one place he says that leave aside all the dystopic ideas and the pessimism that it generates, because pessimism has its own energy, and that's going to defeat the purpose of human unity. It's not going to derail it forever, because that's coming. Human unity is coming. But it will delay it, or it will make it come in a very torturous fashion. And we have seen enough torture in human systems. We don't need to see more. At this point we can help humanity with our inner force. So he used the word goodwill. That all people of goodwill meet together and decide to create a community, an intentional community. So there are so many intentional communities around the world right now. So after the war, the scene changed, and in particular, in the 50s, end of the 50s, something happened. You all know what happened. In 1956, the supramental manifestation happened. No humans were conscious of it. But we know it because the mother was there and she told us that something momentous has happened. A higher force has consented to come down in the earth atmosphere. And it is playing out its magic. And you can see that the mindset of people are changing. So right at the end of the 50s, it caught on, and there is something called the counterculture movement that happened in Europe, America, India. It spilled all over the world. Just like a revolution spills, this was a revolution of protest, cultural protest. So, and it started with the youth, students, very young adults, and they started asking important questions. about the norms we follow in education. Why do we follow a classroom education? Why not nature education? Why do we not allow older people to join in the classroom? Has education stopped ever just because they are 21 and above? So they started asking extremely important questions, and they said the system doesn't work. The political system doesn't work. Capitalism, where you're chasing after materialism, money, your own comfort, private property, doesn't work. So we don't want this economy. We don't want this sort of education. We don't even want the music you create and the dances you create. So we're going to explore different kinds of music. So they started their own bands, rock bands, and various kinds of experiments in dancing, in art. Everything just started bursting out of, like suddenly some door was open, and it already happened in the 60s. It was a very big movement, and then they also started saying that it's not enough to expand in the cultural field. We need a solid base for it. So what is that solid base? It's the spiritual field. If you don't have the spirit pushing you ahead, you will not know what to create, how to create, will it be a beautiful creation? So they needed the spirit. So there was a lot of exploration into the field of spirit, of the spiritual world. So a lot of them came to India, they found gurus. A lot of gurus went to America and Europe. So it was an age of a lot of exchange, beautiful cultural, spiritual exchange. And in that world atmosphere, the mother starts dreaming. In around 1964-65, she says, I have created the ashram, and it is for a purpose. It is for the individual's growth and collective yoga, because ashram is also a community, and they're doing collective yoga and the individual's growth. But what for the world? I need something for the world. I need examples that the world can follow. The world has learned about conflict resolution, but have they learned about harmony building? That's the positive aspect of conflict resolution. Why wait for a conflict? Figure out how to collaborate, do something together so that you'll never get into conflict. So I want those models. And it's not just the models in the thought plane. I'm not funding a research for philosophers to write new books. It is in the material plane, that starting from how you build homes integrated with nature, how you build a city with different zones, keeping the water, air, everything, noise, in a harmony with humans. Like we have seen that humans have broken the harmony of nature for a long time. Like we have abused animals, we have abused the earth, the plant, the ocean, the air, every possible thing for our own growth. This is not what living in nature means symbiotically. So she said, I want that example. So you make your buildings using materials, using concepts that's going to work. So she said, I want from the most material level to the most spiritual level, I want one township, one place, which is going to work out these new ideas. So she put it in the charter, right? It's a research from the most material to the greatest spiritual heights. So she created this, and what is her basis? This book, The Idea of Human Unity. And I'll read some things from the human unity, from the idea of human unity, and this is regarding the spiritual turn of nature, of man. Like why it is very important to start with knowing where you're going first. That you all come together in such an intentional community, but what is your intention? So you should know that well. And if you don't know that and don't remind yourself every so often what that intention is, it's easy to get derailed, especially with you start looking at the trees and not the forest. At some point you have to step back, look at the forest and say, that was my intention, so I return. So to set the intention, here is what Shabindu says, I'm going to read now. There can be no universal dharma system, one in mental creed and vital form. So there was the question that religion has tried to unite people, And it has united lots of people, in very big numbers of people across national borders. It has been that force. But it has also been a force of discord. People have fought each other for religion. It has finally narrowed people's minds into creeds. So she says the word creed, though I don't want to use that word. We are not a religious organization, we are a spiritual organization. So if you are thinking of a universal religion, it has to be a spiritual culture rather than a universal religion. So the word religion itself has become so loaded that he has used the word religion and religious, so I'm going to replace it with dharma because we are so many years beyond and I don't want to go back to that. So let me start again. There can be no universal dharmic system, one in mental creed and vital form. The inner spirit is indeed one, but more than any other, the spiritual life insists on freedom and variation in its self-expression and means of development. A dharma of humanity means the growing realization that there is a secret spirit, a divine reality, in which we are all one, that humanity is its highest present vehicle on earth, that the human race and the human being are the means by which it will progressively reveal itself here. It implies a growing attempt to live out this knowledge and bring about a kingdom of this divine spirit upon earth. By its growth within us, oneness with our fellow men will become the leading principle of our life. Not merely a principle of cooperation, but a deeper brotherhood, a real and an inner sense of unity and equality and a common life. There must be a realization by the individual that only in the life of his fellow man is his own life complete. A spiritual oneness, ready always to enrich its secure unity by a free inner variation and a freely varied outer self-expression. This would be the basis for a higher type of human existence. So freedom and diversity, both wedded together, how difficult. It's like liberty and equality of the French Revolution. It was so difficult for any society to bring the two together, leave alone fraternity. In fact, fraternity is perhaps the answer or the solution to bringing these two together. So too much freedom became capitalism and some people grew too big and some people too small and became polarized. And too much equality became uniformity where there is no incentive to live anymore. Everyone's the same. There is no individual. The individual is crushed. Communism, capitalism, and so many different trials and errors that tried in between, structures in between, socialism for example. But where was fraternity or the brotherhood of man? And unless you accept a spiritual existence that we are spirits finally, with bodies, with lives, that brotherhood will be very tenuous. You cannot say we are brothers and then squabble over property and food and all resources. So that's the challenge. And he says that unless you realize that we are all spirits, it's a great ask, right? Just to bring some people together and say, do you realize you are a spirit and that everyone else is a spirit and then you are part of the same spirit? Only then can you create a community. So how do you get these people who already have realized they are spirits and want to create this project? Because if you realize you are the spirit, you may want to check out of it. Like for hundreds of years people have done. So I am a spirit, I have realized the spirit, why should I care about material pleasure? And why should I care about fighting with others or becoming a household with harmonies to work out? It's so difficult. It's much easier to just go out, find your own hermitage somewhere and leave society. So not only do you want people who want to do it harmoniously, who are ready to face challenges, but you are also asking them to know that they are actually spiritual beings. How do you get a handful of people like that?
I have a question. So here, in spite of all the issues in the whole world, people have come with goodwill. But in spite of goodwill, we are still having some conflict because, as you said, we have to go towards the spirit. So that we are all one, but we are still human beings. And we forget the goal for which we have come. So why still there should not be any conflict here. There should be, yes, each one wanting to do something and others who want to do in a different style. It should be accepted. But why it's still happening and why these people feel not accepted, tortured when their wishes, which is away from the divine vision, is not accepted. So what Shobhika says about it in the book is how we can go beyond all our ego, desires, fantasy, and all that, and when can unite and really manifest others' vision.
Yeah. So they know it is very difficult, and that's why they tried it. And they tried it. They put a lot of adversity on people. It was a challenge that people had to go through. It was a hero's journey because it was barren, a symbolic barrenness and also physical barrenness. And the pioneers came and they planted trees and they made the community that you see. If you once in a while turn around and see how much you have achieved in 55 years, it's phenomenal. That the models that the mother wanted to send out to the world are already here. The model of planting trees in a barren place, producing organic farming, and all the kind of research that has gone in even making this building. These kind of really cutting edge technology is available in the material field. But in the field of life, there are discords, and in the field of spiritual field, there is ignorance. There is such a lot of ignorance that people don't know that they are souls and that finally we are all souls and we have to figure out diversity. And one of the keywords for diversity is freedom. Even freedom to interpret what the mother said. Because her charter was also very open-ended. So there will be multiple interpretations of what she said also. So if you have people of goodwill and they want this project to happen, they'll work out the solution. That we are not going to quit this and we won't force anyone else to quit. Because finally we have come to make this thing happen and we think very differently. So differently that we don't even have a word to exchange and we are having difficulty living in the same place. And yet we have both come with this aspiration that we want this project to work out. And why you have so much problems is because the world has problems. And you are mirroring the problems of the world. Once you find a solution, that solution will be exported to the world. That somehow you will release it in the world atmosphere and people will pick up, they don't even have to read your works or come to see what you have done. It will be available. And similarly, all the discord in the world are also available here. So it is so hard because really right now I think the world is going through a very dark phase. I don't want to be a pessimist because that itself releases a lot of bad energy. Just like optimism brings in a lot of good energy. But we don't want to be ostriches also. So we want to be optimists by choice. That no matter what, even if there are wars around, even if people are still torturing and they still don't get this thing about sharing, we will continue dreaming of it. So it's a very challenging project that especially people have taken up here. But I think the fact that you're here, there is some piece of the puzzle you're holding. It's a huge puzzle, maybe you're not even seeing the picture. Maybe it's that galaxy picture, who knows? But you have one piece of the puzzle, that's why you're here. Otherwise you won't be here. You will probably be slowly sidetracked or you find somewhere else because your energy you have to have the faith. If you are here, it's because your energy is here, and somewhere in the world you represent an architect. All these energies, not good and bad, energies are floating around, you represent that, and that one wants to figure out how to interact with other archetypes, other energies, and you need to be there, you can't give up. Because then the whole project of human unity gets pushed back. It's been so many years since the supramental realization or manifestation, and it needs to come. So at one point, Sri also gives that indication of time. In a sense, he says we have all infinity, and then suddenly he turns back and he says, no, don't relax. Because it's important to do it. So let me read that thing about the time spirit. So here's an interesting thing. We are almost at the end of it. So he wrote this book in 1918, around end of war. So 14 to 20 is when he wrote this, during the war. Then he had the Second World War, which was very devastating for the whole of the world. But then we got freedom. So he wrote a postscript chapter around 1950s, just before his passing. And there he predicted a lot of movements that will come about, like the Cold War. Then one superpower will take over, and there will be this churning that will happen, and then slowly the world will understand that they have to create their own regional blocks, like we have, right? ASEAN, SAARC, Organization of American States, African States. So there are all these blocks, and at some point they will also coalesce to form a real union, more stable than the United Nations, because the United Nations, unfortunately, if I can use a quote from George Orwell's Animal Farm, some people are more equal. We start with equality, but then you realize some people are more equal. So that's what happened to the United Nations. So there will be some sort of understanding of internationalism, and the spirit, rather than the form, will form this new structure. So he predicted all that. And then regarding this project that we are doing in Auroville and Ashram, he wrote, the indwelling deity who presides over the destiny of the race has raised in man's mind and heart the idea, the hope of a new order which will replace the old unsatisfactory order and substitute for it conditions of the world's life which will in the end have a reasonable chance of establishing permanent peace and well-being. This would, for the first time, turn into an assured fact the ideal of human unity, which, cherished by a few, seemed for so long a noble chimera. Then might be created a firm ground of peace and harmony, and even a free room for the realization of the highest human dreams, for the perfectibility of the race, a perfect society, a higher upward evolution of the human soul and human nature. It is for the men of our day, and at the most of tomorrow, to give the answer. So we are the men of tomorrow, he's writing in 1950. For too long a postponement or too continued a failure will open the way to a series of increasing catastrophes which might create a too prolonged and disastrous confusion and chaos and render the solution too difficult or impossible. It might even end in something like an irremediable crash, not only of the present world civilization, but of all civilization. A new, a difficult and uncertain beginning might have to be made in the midst of the chaos and ruin, after perhaps an extermination on a large scale, and a more successful creation could be predicted only if a way was found to develop a better humanity, or perhaps a greater, a superhuman race. So you hear that urgency in his call. It's like there will be a lot of catastrophe, and it may become impossible if you don't do this. soon enough, because the adversary forces are also very strong. And those who think Shravana and Mother have gone, they are working even harder. So don't be under that illusion that they are not physically here, so they are not there. So they are there even more, they are like everywhere, and they are helping. So I know this, all of us go through a lot of discord, and perhaps even more right now, because this is the situation of the world. That we've come to a tipping point. After this, people are going to say enough is enough. I don't even want to belong to this species. That's good. Don't belong to human species, belong to the next. Don't give up and check out, but figure out a new way of living, a new way of being. And for all that, this laboratory was chosen. In the world, this place was chosen. It's haloed by the rishis, and that energy still is there. And that's why this Mother and Shravana are settled. They are also rishis and rishikas, and they're actually pulling in the modern rishis and rishikas. We may wear Western clothes and we may speak a Western language, but somewhere deep down we are still chanting the hymns that were given to us. And this is how the hymns are coming out now, through discord, through conversations, perhaps through a bit of tears, blood, sweat and tears, whatever, but it's there to work out. All of you are here to work out something new. So it is a very big responsibility for the world, not just for your household. And by household I mean this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the biggest household possible. But for the future of this, of this whole race, the human race, this project was started. And in 55 years, if you look around, it's phenomenal what you've done. As an outsider, I can say this. It's a miracle, and the things that you're caught up with, I'm sure you'll get over.
Because it is fantastic, this how hard
Yes.
have come. Yeah, but see, trees should not become God and forget mothers. Because the city needs to be built so that all people can come and collaborate and profit of this city, which will be unique. So there we really need to go through a little bit of narrow passes now.
Yeah, working out harmony. Oh yes, I wanted to tell about the 4 kings that are needed to, I think. They are also the 4 Vedic kings who sort of disappeared from the consciousness of people. They are the servitors of Ritam. From Satyam, Ritam, Brihat, the formula of truth. Ritam is right or harmony. So these 4 kings were banished and now we bring them back. And these are Varuna, the Lord of vastness, broad-mindedness, the all-embracing love that you can get, that's Varuna. With him comes Mitra, harmony and friendship and love. So that's the second king. The third king is Aryama. Aryama is the straightforward, the forceful, the arrow that's pointed directly towards the goal. No distraction. That powerhouse behind Varuna and Mitra. And all of them are working together for the 4th god, who is Bhaga. And Bhaga is the lord of enjoyment. And there's a very beautiful etymology of the word. Bhaga comes from Bhaga. Bhaga and Bhaga, they have the same root, and Bhaga is sharing. So to enjoy something, you have to share. If you are holding something, you'll see enjoyment disappear. If you see something beautiful, you want to show it to someone. It is a very natural process. Look how beautiful. And then when you're sharing that moment of joy, both of you are increasing the joy. So that's what Bhaga means. Enjoy this world and enjoy it through sharing. So the word itself has a clue as to how you should do it. And I think now we get those 4 kings back, those 4 gods who are the servitors of Ritam in particular. Satyam and Brihat also, but Ritam. So all of you embody these 4 kings, so give them place. So slowly they'll hopefully work out the problems of the crossroads we are at, and then we move forward. Okay.
this question. Don't you think we have the forces of separation and individualization, which is actually causing more conflicts all over the world? People are becoming more and more, I don't know whether the word is egotistical, but they're becoming more individual. It's my thing, my land, my rights, and less of the community. Is that forces, or is it just how things are supposed to pan out?
No, I think they called it, like they're trying to find a word for it. There are words like narcissism or hyper-individualism. It becomes so, like the person's circle, boundaries just become so small that it's reduced to just the one person, not even the family. And it is very difficult for the human nervous system. The nervous system is part of the tree of life. At some point, if you let it will be part of all the roots. You know, the earth has this nervous system, all the trees hugging hands under the earth, hugging hands over the earth. So similarly, the human nervous system is also such a, if you look at the picture also, it shows you the nerves that you see in a leaf are exactly the image of the nerves in the body. So our nervous system doesn't end in the skin. And if you try to do that, it hurts it. So those people who have run into hyper-individualism for various reasons, greed, insecurity, are going through a lot of pathological issues. Issues of the nervous system, which shows up as issues of the mind, mental problems, psychic problems, psychological problems. So slowly the realization has come that this model doesn't work. The capitalist model.
My question is, are those forces, external forces operating, which is beyond the human, where the humanity is just being swept away by these forces of individualization, or what you are calling hyper individual.
It's there
by themselves.
Yes, it's there. People are imbibing it, and it takes effort to stand against anything. So rejection is a very difficult task. Vigilance and rejection. So you have to be vigilant and reject all these. Like simple, these things, where do they come from? They come from films and videos and memes, just language. So these things are floating because we have this nervous system. We have opened up the nervous system of the mind world, which is called the internet. So through that nervous system, a lot of these ideas are coming through. Those who are not keeping a good filter are getting it in. So you're not vigilant, so we just imbibe. And a lot of children are imbibing it. Because they have devices, so they have all become nodes in this nervous system of the internet. It's just another part of the nervous system, and they are just imbibing it because they haven't developed the tools to reject. And all these things were not available even 20 years back. The internet wasn't there. So with the internet, there's a new onslaught of these forces that are floating around, and people have to wake up to their own needs, put their own boundaries. So there's a lot of individual battle to be done, and battle in the community level, in the field of education. So something?
Yes.
I wanted to recently I rediscovered Sri-Aurobindo's article, The Chariot of Jagannatha. I don't know if you have studied this in all of it. I think it's fascinating because he says that the ideal society has four wheels: unity, freedom, knowledge, and power. So I thought, in that order, you see, you have to have the unity first, and that unity is natural. I mean, human unity is something that's a fact. You know, we are one. That's it. It's not a union; it's a unity. In other words, the same self is in everyone. But then the next one is freedom. To have that ability just to be able to appreciate and give other people space to be themselves. Then knowledge, and finally power. Power is the last, you know, those who put power first, then that leads to things like wars. But Perhaps you remember that when Sri Aurobindo came to Pondicherry, he took an assumed name on the boat, Jagannath Mitra. And somebody said, "Oh, you see, Sri Aurobindo also told a lie." And I thought, no, because this is his other self. He's the Lord of the world. Sri Aurobindo uses this expression that Jagannatha is the Lord of the world. And Mitra, of course, is the friend of all. You mentioned he's one of the 4 kings of the Veda. Fortunately in India, they celebrate this. They pull the chariot of Jagannatha in Odisha every year. They had a photography exhibit in Pandi recently, and at the end they put up this. It's only like 5.5 pages. I thought it'd be great if they put a little tack on the visitor center and hung it there for anybody who wanted to read it. That is Sri Aurobindo's vision of the ideal society. Thank you.
I have nothing more to add. It's just that what you're doing is great, and go ahead, bon chance. And I belong to the ashram community. We have a close relationship to the Aurobindo community. So somehow we are part of it. Or at least in my heart I feel that this project should definitely go ahead and be a great success in the world. And so many models should come out of it. All that mother envisioned, at one point she said, it's not my dream, it's the divine's dream. Aurobindo is the divine's dream. So let that dream come true.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session today. I request everyone Pitaji to hand over the song. I extend my sincere gratitude to each one of you for coming today, and all of the speakers who came here during the spiritual hours at 7 to 8 a.m. All the participants who participated all over the way. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day today with multiple programs and different videos. Thank you so much.
In Savitri's program, it was really very beautiful because we always started with Omkar with Narada. I just want to say that at 2 o'clock there is more deeper discussions at Bhumika. Then at 4 o'clock again on different themes which we are working at Aurobindo. And 6 o'clock all are invited to auditorium, the auditorium for a magnificent Veena concert. He was a child prodigy and now he's to adulthood, but it will be fantastic. So please come and bring all your friends. Thank you. Thank you. So good.